What's going on, Colts Nation? I appreciate you joining me for another video where today we're going to talk a little bit about defensive ends, right? This is a conversation that comes up because of something that I saw. And, we've already gone through the entire offense of, hey, what should we do in free agency? We've looked at different positions. Well, defensive line was actually the one that I wanted to talk about next. And then I saw this and I thought, hey, we should probably have this conversation before I record that video. So for this one, I just want to talk a little bit about Quitty Pay. He's going to be involved in this conversation, also talking about Trey Hendrickson. If you don't know who that is, he is a defensive end from the Bengals. And the reason that this comes up is because Bengals de facto GM Duke Tobin says that the team may not be able to afford an extension for Trey Hendrickson, which would make sense, right? They got Joe Burrow. They franchise tag T. Higgins, so they clearly want to keep him. They obviously want to keep Jamar Chase, who got the Triple Crown this year. They want to keep an offensive line there for Joe Burrow, right? They want to build that offense with money and then build a defense with the draft is presumably what they're going to be trying to do. So Trey Hendrickson seems like a guy that might be on his way out. He said, quote, "We can't have guys at the top of the payroll in every position. We will do what we can." And obviously, Hendrickson was an all-pro this season. He has 17 and a half sacks each of the last two seasons. He led the league in sacks this year with those 17 and a half sacks. And the Bengals, I didn't know this till just a couple days ago, but the Bengals are the only team in the NFL that have an owner that's not a billionaire, which I did not know. I didn't even know that was possible in today's NFL. Now with the salary cap, you don't need to be a billionaire, right? He's still, got the money to be able to cover the expenses of the team. But nonetheless, the Bengals are in a situation where they can't do all the restructuring that some of these other teams are able to do, right? Some of specifically like Rams, Saints, the Bucks, right? What these teams have done over the past few years, obviously they've had to mitigate different losses and figure out ways to operate with a bunch of dead money and this and that. But they can restructure and they can give guys more guaranteed money than the Bengals are really going to be able to do. That's really the issue that they have trying to build this team around Joe Burrow. So Trey Hendrickson, with what he's got going on now, I say Quitty Pay comes in this conversation because I started thinking, hey, maybe you don't have to give up so much draft capital. You give them another player. I don't know how likely that would be. When you look at it, Quitty Pay currently 26. And then when you look at Trey Hendrickson, he's 30 years old, right? He started his career with the Saints. Almost forget about that. He's been with the Bengals for a few years now. But he's 30 years old. He'll be 31 later this year at some point. So looking at a situation where they could just want to give, trade Trey Hendrickson to somebody and get as much draft capital as they possibly can. Because, again, they probably want to build that defense through the draft so that they can pay a lot of guys on their offense. So how are they going to go about this? Obviously, for them, it would be cheaper to keep Sam Hubbard and find a way to get rid of Trey Hendrickson. And it's just, for us, it almost doesn't make sense. Like from a draft capital standpoint, it would be interesting to see what it would take, right? A guy that just led the league in sacks. That's what's going to make him hard to trade because his age, but he just led the league in sacks. How long will he keep up that level of play and how consistent can he be, right? Like looking through his stats, there was a game with 4 sacks, a game with 3.5 sacks. That's 7.5 sacks in 2 games. Out of the other 15 games, he still gets 10 sacks, which is a good amount, but obviously a little bit streaky, right? Multiple games with 2 sacks, so plenty of games with no sacks. It's just how consistent can he be game in, game out? Obviously, somebody that effective, teams are going to game plan for him and have to game plan around him, but that can help you also, right? And this is a guy, he's not racking up a bunch of tackles. Like, ideally, you don't need your edge rushers to be like world beaters in the run game. I know Quitty Pay is, and we've become accustomed to that because that's what Chris Ballard talks about when he defends Quitty Pay. But at the end of the day, like your pass rushers are supposed to rush the passer. You have linebackers and defensive tackles to help stop the run, right? The nickel cornerback, those guys are supposed to be able to stop the run, right? Your safety's coming up. It's not really supposed to be the job of at least in my opinion. Like I just want my edge rushers to rush the passer. The rest of the defense is supposed to read, react, and to be able to get the ball carrier down, right? Just make the tackle is really what that comes down to. And at the end of the day, Quitty Pay, again, he does fine in the run game. He's obviously not the pass rusher that Trey Hendrickson is. And Chris Ballard handcuffed us. There, it would make sense to trade Quitty Pay for this scenario or that scenario. But Chris Ballard put us in a situation where picking up the 5th-year option, and now due to the way, averages work out and the salary gets bumped up, it is a fully guaranteed $13,387,000. So when you look at his production level, you look at what he's going to be making this year, like in fully guaranteed, nobody's going to want to take that. You look at Trey Hendrickson. That's where his contract, much different. There is no guaranteed money. Which is good that he's been able to produce. You really think about it. 2024 he had no guaranteed money either. So he's really having to earn a lot of his money through different bonuses, right, and incentives and things like that. And I'm sure he had a few this year. Obviously, not making it to the playoffs, he's not getting all that. But nonetheless, looking at it this year, no guaranteed money for him this year, which is going to be attractive to teams. But for the flip-flop, because Quitty's contract is guaranteed, like I just don't think he can be part of it. And also it's the money. Trey Hendrickson, his cap number is $18,666,668, which is right around $5.3 million more than Quitty Pay. When you look at dead money and cap savings, they would take on $2,666,668 worth of dead money, and then cap savings would be $16 million. So if you were to include Quitty in a trade overall, they would save like $1 million. I think actually they would save right around $750,000, $700,000 is what they would save getting Quitty Pay, and they would get less production. They'd get less production. So I just wanted to mention Quitty Pay in this because that's the option of all the players on the team. That's the one that I thought, hey, if we're going to trade, just trade one for another. Obviously there would be different options throughout the team, but I'm just thinking if you're trying to filter out some of the guys on the team, right? Trying to change things around this offseason, bring in a new guy, get rid of a guy. Like, who would it make the most sense? A guy that is on the last year of his contract for us. And that's what I was thinking with Quitty Pay. Same position, same kind of situation, but Quitty's contract kind of makes that more difficult. So then, of course, like I mentioned earlier, it turns to what does draft compensation become? And that'd be the hard part of this. So it'd be great to have Trey Hendrickson. I think this is something that the front office at least do their job and consider it and look into it. Hey, what if we did this? What would it look like? What would the options be? And how would we get it done? I think doing their due diligence on that is just the best way to go about it. But at the end of the day, I think there's probably a better chance you go into this draft and just go defense heavy, right? That's really where I'm at with this. I think even in free agency, wherever we need to fill holes, there are holes on defense that I want to fill in free agency, but definitely like that backup running back position, giving Jonathan Taylor a good 1-2 punch with a veteran running back in the league and go into free agency and do that. And then you can go into the draft and go really defense heavy, including defensive line. There are a lot of good defensive linemen, edge rushers, interior in this draft. So I think that's what the Colts should probably focus on. But I know this conversation, at some point, more people are going to hear about this, and this is going to become more of a conversation like after the Super Bowl, and people talking about, hey, is Trey Hendrickson going to still be with the Bengals? Well, in my opinion, the way the Bengals are going, he probably won't be with the Bengals, but I think maybe the Lions are a team that might be in play for that. I just don't see us really being an option for that. But it is an interesting conversation. I am a fan. Even when he was with the Saints, he was somebody that I paid attention to, somebody that I thought didn't get talked about enough. And before this year, I still think he didn't get talked about enough. And really, I was probably still gets looked over, right? People talk about Myles Garrett, TJ Watt. How many of you have never heard of Trey Hendrickson? Right, so really good player, just probably not the right fit for the Colts at the exact moment, unfortunately. So that's the way I feel about it. Do you think the Colts should take a chance on Trey Hendrickson, or do you think we should go into free agency or the draft? Whatever the case may be, we'll be talking about defensive linemen in free agency coming up here over the next couple days. So make sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you get notified when any more content does drop throughout this offseason. Of course, I appreciate you stopping by for another video. And as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go Colts.